What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we are continuing the On the Move series. If you missed episode 1, definitely go back and check it out. We were talking about QBs that might be traded or could become free agents this NFL offseason. Today we're talking about the running backs, and it's a little bit harder of a group to pinpoint who might be actually leaving and whatnot and where they might end up. But nonetheless, this is a fun series that I look forward to doing. If you don't understand the premise, basically what it is if these players end up leaving in free agency, though I think a lot of them end up staying where they are, but if they were to leave and find a new home, where would that be, or at least where would be an interesting fit? So that's kind of the point of this series. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Which one would be the most thought-provoking, most interesting fit, best storyline, whatever? And which do you think is just too crazy, would never happen, not a shot? And then also just give me your predictions for these players in general. I'd love to have your thoughts. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and hit the subscribe button if you're new and want more NFL content like this. Without further ado, we'll jump into it. And the big name running back free agent this offseason is Aaron Jones. He's likely to be tagged, at least in my mind. I think it's an $8.5 million cap hit for the Packers if they tag Jones. Jamaal Williams is another name we'll talk about later, so Green Bay doesn't want to lose both of their talented running backs. But with Aaron Jones, if he were to leave, I think the most logical spot would be the New York Jets. They have a ton of cap room. Probably taking a quarterback at number 2. This is a chance to get a superstar running back in Aaron Jones. You'll see I have the cap room listed on the screen, almost $68 million. And with the selection of presumably Zach Wilson at number 2, you're not paying a QB for 5 years. Go ahead and pay Aaron Jones good running back money in that duration and help alleviate some of those rookie problems that you'll have with Wilson immediately, and just try to lighten the load for what you're asking of him. Plus, Robert Saleh comes from San Francisco, and his offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur does as well, so we know how important the running game was in that San Francisco offense, and if the philosophy is anywhere near the same, Aaron Jones fits in pretty well, and obviously he could be in line for a huge type of season. So I like the idea of Aaron Jones going to the Jets. Moving on to our next running back, Chris Carson. And he's looked good when he's in Seattle, but he's battled some injuries. And ultimately, I think Seattle actually will let Chris Carson walk, and they'll try to find another solution, which I think I have an interesting one later on in this video. But Chris Carson to the Miami Dolphins, I think, makes a ton of sense. The Dolphins are looking for a workhorse running back. Chris Carson can be that. The Dolphins might also draft a running back. Like, I could see them taking Najee Harris at 18. Really, I could. Or maybe they wait till the second round, grab one of the 2 UNC backs, or just try to get solid value in the later rounds. Whatever the case may be, this team needs a running back, and I think Chris Carson, if you were to sign him in free agency, automatically is a solid number 1 running back, and honestly, he's not as expensive as somebody like Aaron Jones, so you might be able to get a good value for him. Plus, then you can use the 18th overall pick or one of the 2 second-rounders that Miami has on a linebacker, an edge rusher, another offensive lineman, wide receiver, whatever the case may be. So if you address running back in free agency, it allows you to use draft capital on other positions that maybe in Miami's eyes are seen as more important. But I like the idea of Chris Carson going to the Dolphins. Third running back that we'll talk about is Kenyan Drake. I could definitely see him returning to Arizona. Him and Chase Edmonds, complement each other pretty well, but if we're going to say he has to leave, I think the Houston Texans certainly would be buyers for Kenyan Drake. Look, they got David Johnson, so you're talking about a couple of different former Cardinals running backs, but I don't think David Johnson is a long-term answer, and it's just kind of like the reminder of that bad DeAndre Hopkins trade. They cut Duke Johnson Jr., so they already are looking for a number 2 running back, and David Johnson and Kenyan Drake, I think, complement each other pretty well. Drake can be your short yardage guy. He had 10 touchdowns last year in Arizona, a lot of them right there on the goal line. So at the minimum, it gives Houston a nice power back option. Of course, this team is interesting to see what they're doing overall moving forward. Like, if they trade Deshaun Watson and go full rebuild, they're probably not going to go out and pay a solid running back money. But if they try to convince Watson to stay, which doesn't seem likely, nonetheless, Kenyan Drake, I think, could be an interesting fit there in Houston. Moving on to James Conner, and this is a tough one for me to handle because he put up 1 Pro Bowl level season as the immediate replacement to Le'Veon Bell, and myself included, and many other Steelers fans thought James Conner could be a number 1 running back on a playoff caliber to Super Bowl caliber team. Since then, between injuries and inefficiency, he clearly is not the guy. He may well return to Pittsburgh, but I like the idea of him actually in this scenario, in this different world we're talking about, being the replacement to Kenyan Drake, and you have Conner be your short yardage. He's not going to break off a bunch of big runs, but he'll get you 4 to 5 yards a pop, and then you have Chase Edmonds as your scat back, likes the ball in his hands in open space. You run a screen for him, whatever the case may be. I think the two of those players complement each other pretty well, and Conner ultimately is going to be pretty cheap, and the Cardinals don't have a whole lot of cap space to play around with, so I think it's a nice compliment from Conner to Edmonds, and the price might be right for Arizona. But you'll hear me say this throughout the video, James Conner, like many of these other running backs, is kind of tough to see moving on from where they're at, and once they sign with a new team, I'm still not sure of that fit until I actually get to see it next NFL season. After Conner, now we're going to talk about Marlon Mack, and I want to give an honorable mention first to Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers. If the Bucs don't bring back Leonard Fournette, which I think they will, but we will talk about Fournette later on, Marlon Mack went to South Florida, University of South Florida, I should say, and that's 15 to 20 minutes away from, Tampa itself. So I could definitely see, and he's from that area, born and raised, so I could see him wanting to have that homecoming of sorts and going to play for the Bucs. And they have pretty modest cap situation. But here, I think Mack's in a spot, I almost put Buffalo here. I think he ends up going to a competitor, tries to play for a playoff caliber team, probably gets a 1-year deal, not a whole lot of money, but it's an opportunity to play on a lot of big games in front of many different eyes and try to prove himself as a number 1 running back. And Green Bay fits the bill. I don't think the Packers lose Jamaal Williams, who we're going to talk about next, and Aaron Jones this offseason. But if they fictitiously did, I think Marlon Mack could then fill in serviceably for that team. And then for Marlon Mack, the benefit is you play on a team that could potentially make a run at the Super Bowl, and they play a lot of big games, a lot of primetime games, so it's an opportunity for a lot of different auditions for next offseason when you're a free agent again. If you ball out in Green Bay, next thing you know, you're getting a huge contract elsewhere. So I think it's one of those advantageous fits for both sides. And as mentioned, Jamaal Williams, if I see him leaving, the Atlanta Falcons are kind of an interesting fit. The cap number is not in a good spot for Atlanta, but maybe they move on from Matt Ryan, especially if they go QB at number 4. Maybe they trade up. Maybe they move on from Julio Jones and try to alleviate some cap room that way. I'm not really sure. This team's really stuck between a rock and a hard place. They could win now, or they can completely rebuild, and they're kind of stuck in no man's land, though. Having the number 4 overall pick in the NFL draft does help with the rebuild process, allows you to go out and get a franchise QB. So I am leaning in that direction if I were to try to take a guess at what the Falcons are going to do moving forward. But Jamaal Williams is only 25 years old, so he's a young player, could fit with an adjusted winning window for this team if they decide to push it back a few years, rebuild, get a rookie QB this year. And Williams, I think, has a lot of the skills that you want at a number 1 back. I think he catches the football really well, has a good blend of power and elusiveness, and if he doesn't play behind Aaron Jones, one of the best running backs in the NFL, maybe we're talking about him getting marquee number 1 running back money this offseason. So I don't know how the cap fits between Williams and Atlanta, but if the Falcons were to somehow make it work, I think Williams is a logical replacement, a good young option for Atlanta as they move on from Todd Gurley. And speaking of Todd Gurley, he might have been the most challenging person, him and the next person we'll talk about, on this list, just because Gurley's not a number 1 back anymore, and at this point between, his injuries that have compiled over the years, and I just don't know if he can handle a number 1 workload, you're looking at him being a complementary piece. So Mike Davis is someone we'll talk about later on in the video, and assuming he leaves, which I don't think he will, but if he were to, Carolina then is looking for a number 2 back behind Christian McCaffrey, and Gurley and McCaffrey I think complement each other pretty well. Similar to what I said about players like Conner and Chase Edmonds earlier, Gurley can be your short yardage, put his head down, get the power back roll, and then Christian McCaffrey can do just about everything. So, and it's also just an opportunity to take Christian McCaffrey off the field, though McCaffrey has battled injuries this past year. Gurley has a long list of injuries, so I don't know if Gurley is the guy. That's why Mike Davis is, solid, dependable. It makes a ton of sense for him to come back, but if they don't get Davis and Gurley's available for cheap, I could see it. Carolina also has the flexibility to go out and maybe get somebody who's even better and more reliable. So maybe they spend a decent amount of money on another running back. But let's just say Gurley's cheap and they need a number 2 back. I could see the fit. That brings us to Leonard Fournette. And again, looking at him in a complementary role, I think that's what made him a really nice player in Tampa Bay. Him and Rojo just worked really well. Neither one of them got all the carries, and I don't know, it was a good blend there in Tampa, and it was a big part of their success, especially late in the year and through their playoff and eventual Super Bowl run. But how about this? If you were to take Leonard Fournette and put him on the LA Chargers, him and Austin Eckler would be such a dynamic duo. Fournette's the power back, Eckler's the elusive, but also the pass catching option between the two. And plus, the Chargers are in a pretty good spot when it comes to cap space. Obviously, Herbert's on a rookie deal, so you have some money to spend. I don't like the idea of Fournette and Eckler being a 1-2 tandem. And I think Eckler's best years were with Melvin Gordon in the backfield, which sounds crazy, but Eckler's also battled injuries, so it's just nice to have a nice, dependable number 2 option if Eckler goes down, or to try to limit his snaps. They did draft Josh Kelly, last offseason, so I'm not saying the Chargers are going to go out and spend money, but it was tough to find a fit for Fournette, and I like him complimenting Eckler a lot, so thus I have put him on the move going to LA to play for the Chargers. Only 4 more running backs to talk about, and this one is, just hear me out on this one. Cordarrelle Patterson, almost left him off the list, but what if he signs with Seattle? So in this fictitious realm, Chris Carson has walked, and I think Seattle, especially with where their cap is at, might have to let him walk. And if they do, I think they have re-signed Alex Collins and they have Rashad Penny, and maybe this is the chance for Penny to be the number 1 option. But I also like the idea of Cordarrelle Patterson as that elite pass catcher out of the backfield. I mean, he is a wide receiver turned a running back. I mean, it's remarkable we're even talking about this. But nonetheless, I think there's a nice fit there. And if Collins and Penny are the lead guys, so be it. I think they can get the job done. Running back is not a position that's the end-all, be-all of the NFL anymore. But Cordarrelle Patterson and what you could do with him in the passing game is super intriguing. And I mean, you're talking about someone who has the experience of finding soft spot in zones, or if he's in man coverage, he's working against linebackers a lot of the time, or he's drawing the attention of a safety, which then pulls the safety from somewhere else on the field. So mismatch-wise, I think Cordarrelle Patterson gives Seattle a lot of what they want, especially if they're going to let Russ chuck the football. And I think that might go a long way to trying to keep Russell Wilson happy, which should be priority number 1 at this point for the Seahawks. Plus, I think Patterson's going to be cheap, only $4+ million and cap room for Seattle, so they'll have to be picky with how they use their money. I think they end up cutting Carlos Dunlap and then just re-signing him. You see teams do that, pretty frequently throughout the offseason. I think Dunlap will like the opportunity to play for a competitor. He's been stuck in Cincy, and you cut him and you save $14 million, creating more flexibility for Seattle. But that's not the point of this video, so instead, just think about it. Let me know what you think down below. Cordarrelle Patterson, would he be a good running back option for the Seahawks this offseason? Next running back, I think, in my opinion, the best running back of all time, just talent-wise. It's also tough. I mean, he is the running back that has dominated my generation of football. Adrian Peterson, and I think this is a great chance for him to just ring chase. Like, he has gone to some weird places. Like, he played in Arizona when that team was not really in a spot to win a Super Bowl. He's signed with Detroit for whatever reason. Now he can go and sign with a contender, and also he gets to be a mentor there in Buffalo. Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are 2 talented but young running backs, and they haven't broken out yet. And now there's calls for Buffalo to go address the running back position, potentially in the first round with the 30th overall pick. Maybe they take Najee Harris or Travis Etienne. But I think here you can get Adrian Peterson for cheap, and he serves a dual purpose. He can be your short yardage goal line back. He was pretty effective at that in Detroit, and he can teach young players like Singletary and Moss, the way of the NFL and how they can improve themselves moving forward. So I like the fit a lot. Plus, it's just a chance for AP to go out and get that ring that he definitely deserves. Second to last name we'll talk about. This one is 100% a stretch. And as mentioned earlier, I'm a Steelers fan. This is more so a thought. I want to see what people think of it. Le'Veon Bell returning to Pittsburgh. The Steelers need to address running back. Maybe they do it in the first round. I think it ends up being an offensive lineman taken at 24 overall for Pittsburgh. But what about a potential cheap reunion between Le'Veon Bell and Pittsburgh? A way to say both sides were wrong earlier on in Bell's career. If Bell took the contract the Steelers were going to offer him, it was $18 million a year on average, which is more than he ended up signing with the New York Jets for. So I'm sure it's something he regrets not doing, and I know it's something the Steelers wish they could redo and have him stick around, because after he left, the running game got bad, and it got bad quick. Pro Bowl level season from James Conner immediately, but even then it wasn't a sexy stat line that he put up, just over 1,000 yards. It was more so because he got a bunch of touchdowns and a really prolific, high-scoring offense at the time. So maybe this is an opportunity for Bell to return to a city that I think still has a soft spot for him, much more so than someone like Antonio Brown. But opportunity for a good reunion. Bell can try to help out a competitive team, and also, similar to what I said about Adrian Peterson, mentor a player like Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland, two young players the Steelers have taken in consecutive drafts. So I don't think it happens, but it's an interesting thought to have, and I feel like it'd be fun. And plus, Bell, I don't know how big his market's really going to be and how much money he will command in his next contract. So Pittsburgh may be able to get a cheap running back option with Bell. And the last name we're going to talk about, we talked about Mike Davis a little bit earlier. If he were to leave Carolina, which I don't think is likely, I think Tampa Bay as the Leonard Fournette replacement makes a fair amount of sense. Ultimately, I think Fournette and Davis stay in place, but Davis had a really nice year, especially filling in for Christian McCaffrey. The later part of the year, he was less efficient than what he was originally when CMC first got hurt, but I still liked what I saw from him, and he can catch the football well. He's got a big body, can get those short yardage spots that the Bucs were using Fournette for. So in my eyes, it fits, and he'll probably be inexpensive. So it makes a ton of sense there for Tampa, so they can address other positions like potentially getting rid of Donovan Smith, though he played pretty well, or maybe bringing back Shaq Barrett, which they definitely should, paying Levante David. So inexpensive option in Mike Davis allows you to have more money to address those contracts and maybe even bring another player in, maybe a JJ Watt. Who knows? But that's all for the video. I'd love to know your thoughts on all these picks and predictions in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think I'm right on and which ones are just completely blasphemous and will never happen. And then ultimately, which one of these running backs on what team would you like to see the most? What is the most thought-provoking and interesting in your opinion? Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe if you're new and want more football content like this. Hope you all enjoyed. My name's Tej, and until next time, I'm signing off.
Part of the last generation that remembers time of God.